Okay, all set?
All set. Sorry about that. Technical
Right.
difficulties. So this is this is Dave Carey, Executive Vice President of Corporate Services, and thank you for joining me again.
You're welcome, Jordan.
And I have some questions for you. So I'm just curious, how do you determine what the next uncarrier move is going to be? Like, do you go reading internet message boards, like, or forums, Timo News or Howard forums, to see what people would like, and then see how to make it happen, or
or what's the magic, huh? To be very honest with you, you pretty much can go and read the Twitter feeds for John Ledger, so that's at John Ledger or at T-Mobile. And customers have now realized that if they tell us something that they would like to have, that there's some probability that we'll do it. And so it has become very much a means of listening and taking input from what customers really want that we use. Now, it's not the only way. I mean, we get that same input, when we listen to customers who, speak with us in our stores, for example, or in our call into our customer care centers. They'll also tell you what you want. There's one third way, which is we listen to the things they complain about to the other carriers. And our whole strategy has been built on the idea that we are taking our brand and we are positioning it as the consumer advocate, and that our mission is to change wireless for the better of all consumers, not just our customers. So our simple belief is that if we listen very carefully and we act on what we hear, we will identify those things that are structural, issues that, the carriers historically have imposed on customers. And if we can address those in a clever, creative, innovative way, that they'll create more reasons for customers to switch brands and come to T-Mobile. So these ideas of these big uncarrier moves are no more than, solutions to pain points that the legacy service providers have imposed on consumers. So that's where they come from. They really do. I'll pick an example that will be relevant, maybe to some of your friends there at school. One of the things I'm sure that you use your devices for is to listen to music. I can see your earbuds in your ear right now.
Absolutely.
You probably have got 5,000 songs stored on your phone or stored on your tablet, and this is your life. It all fits right in here. Get it up there so everybody can see it. Your life. You live here, right? Tell me. Right. So one of the things. This is where you listen to music, or if you're using your device to tape lectures and things. All right, and you don't want that music that you're listening for streaming services, which is more and more, rather than music collections, it's streaming services that are being used. For somebody with your lifestyle, you don't want that to count against your data plan. So we found a way to have a wide range of the most popular music streaming services that use the data that comes over your cellular plan, whitelisted and not counted against yours. That's a reason to come to T-Mobile, because music is free, and that's something that you put value to, that the other guys charge you for. So those are ways of listening to customers and what they're using these amazing technologies and devices for these days, and finding a way to give them something as opposed to charge them for it. It's a business strategy.
Provide added value, basically.
Exactly.
And so you mentioned your competitors a little bit. Do you believe that T-Mobile, or excuse me, Verizon, AT&T, Sprint have had any compelling reactions to the uncarrier moves?
Well, the answer is yes, okay, but as intended is also what I would tell you. Okay, again, our when we put together the strategy for what this brand will represent and what kind of company it will be, our vision of what we're really all about is changing the way the wireless business works for the betterment of all customers and consumers, not just the ones that happen to be customers of T-Mobile right now. So there's some fundamental things, rules of the industry that were established by the carriers. Let's just take a few to illustrate the point. Contracts, okay? Wasn't too long ago that, if your service provider was, Verizon or AT&T or Sprint, and even T-Mobile if you go back far enough, where the way you bought wireless service is you went in and you signed up for a 2-year contract. You paid, some amount for the device, whatever the promotional number was. It was $99, $199 as a function of what device you picked and when you bought it. And then you signed up for a 2-year contract. And then during that 2-year period, the way it was propositioned to you was you will earn your right to an upgrade. What do you mean earn your right to an upgrade? A 2-year contract is just a commitment that you're making to them that you'll pay for the device. These things don't cost $99. They cost $700. That's what you go to the Apple store to buy one of these, they're $700. They're not $99. If your daddy taught you that when something sounds too good to be true, it's probably not true, that's because it's not true, okay? They're $700. You sign that 2-year contract for one of these devices with whatever the down payment is that you've agreed to pay at the time, you've paid off this device in about 14 months. Do they lower their price in 14 months? No, they keep it right there. That's where they get the big profit margin from. And then generally these things last longer than 2 years now. So believe me, if you keep it in the month 25, 26, 30, 36, 40, wow, that's a gravy chain. You bought this phone 2 times. You only got one. Where's the deal in that, right? So what we're all about is effectively, we're a challenger brand. And when you're a challenger brand and you're trying to take market share away from the other guy, there's a lot of profit margin to be gained just by getting incremental customers and taking away the profitability from them. So their profit level is up here, ours is down here. That space in between there is gravy space for us to work in. We're willing to take just a share of that, give the customer back their immediate when they come to us. That's how you make the business equation work.
Wonderful. And so other carriers, such as Verizon, have seen their churn kind of increasing. For example, in the second quarter of 2014, Verizon's churn, or I guess I should probably say what churn is. Basically, and I know you already know this, but churn is basically the consumers who defect from a wireless carrier to go to another one, correct?
Yeah, churn is basically you lost the customer, just putting it flat out. You've lost the customer, you've lost the revenue, so that's churn.
Correct. And so Verizon's churn has been increasing. For example, in the second quarter of 2014, its churn was about 0.9%. Quarter 3 was about 1%. Quarter 4, 1.14%. Do you think T-Mobile has had a role in that?
Yeah, listen, there's no question about the fact that we have, because there's another metric that's used pretty universally throughout the industry, and that is a corollary metric to churn, which is called porting ratios. Porting ratios are, in effect, the exchange of customers between 2 individual players. So when you hear a porting ratio of like 2 to 1, it means that T-Mobile got 2 customers from AT&T for every 1 that AT&T got from us. So you see it's an exchange rate, if you will. 1 went that way, 2 came into us. The porting ratio is 2.0. Now, here's how we tie these 2 ideas, churn and porting ratios, together. Number 1, when we observe the porting ratios with every one of the other major 3 carriers, Sprint, AT&T, and Verizon, okay, for last year, not for a single week in the whole year did we not have a positive porting ratio with every other carrier, which meant that we were taking market share away from each one of them all year long, every week of the year. So more customers were leaving them and coming to us than leaving us and going to them. So no question about it, that will get reflected back into the churn ratios as well. If you listen very carefully, in the fourth quarter of 2014, both the CFO of Verizon, Fran Chamo, who's a very, very notable guy in the industry, as well as his equivalent at AT&T, both articulated that churn ratios were going up, and that if they were going to retreat from this competitive battleground and just allow some of that share to go to T-Mobile and the others, they were going to retreat back to playing with just the most profitable customers. So, which is it's very rational. If you've got 100 customers and they all are paying you, let's just for numerical sake say $100 of profit each year, the question becomes, would you price down 100 of those $20 each, or would you allow 10 of those to go over to the other guy? You'd allow 10 of those to go to the other guy. It's the most economically rational thing to do. That's in effect what they're doing. So that share take that's going on between the companies will continue. It's the rational thing for those guys to allow to happen, and we're going to be as aggressive about it as we possibly can. We've already passed Sprint as the third largest now, with our line of sight now on the back of AT&T. So let's go get them.
And how do you see yourself eventually? I don't know. Is it the goal of T-Mobile and its management to eventually catch up with AT&T or even Verizon?
Yeah. So we came into this with some very deliberate points of view as to what we were trying to do. Okay, let's just step back. So John Ledger and I got here just a little over 2 years ago now, and the situation that we observed prior to getting here was, look at T-Mobile was a company that at that time had 33 million customers. Now let's just think about the big picture here. There are 330 million potential subscribers in the United States. That's the total population, basically. Now, truth is, each of us now is having multiple lines. So you got your device, you got your tablet, you're gonna have wearables in the future. So you'll have multiple lines. But let's just start it at there's an opportunity to have 330 million customers. Some of them may have multiple types of lines. We had 33 million, 10%, round number. 10% was what our customer base was. We had a brand that, as brands go, T-Mobile had a high level of brand awareness, but in terms of brand reputation, it was sinking fast. So brand preference, brand awareness high, brand preference low. Okay. Now, if you want to change the position of a brand, as long as you got high awareness, if your preference is low or high, you can change that. You can change a low brand preference to a high brand preference, but if you have to do both things, moving the awareness up and the preference up, that's a much bigger investment that you have to make. So we had high awareness, low preference, 10% market share. We had a network that was inferior. It hadn't been upgraded to LTE at all, zero, none. So Verizon and AT&T and even Sprint at the time had a leg up on us on that front. And the business was eroding. Okay, we were losing postpaid customers, the most valuable, at the rate of 500,000 a quarter, 2 million a year. You only got a 33 million customer base, and you're losing 2 million of your most valuable customers every year. It doesn't take too long before that goes into financial trouble. There were a number of strategic things. We didn't have the iPhone in the device portfolio, so I happen to be personally an iOS guy, and I couldn't get one at T-Mobile. Okay, so 48% or so of the people had a preference for iOS and could not source that device through T-Mobile. That's a problem. So there were a number of things that in that equation that to one person might look like a problem. To John and I, they look like an opportunity. How would you go about turning those things around really becomes the question. And it all starts with, what is this brand going to stand for? Where are you going to take it in the industry? And what is the objective that you have for it? So there's no question about it in our mind that the market structure in the U.S. is capable of supporting 3 brands for the long run, or 3 networks for the long run. multiple brands, but 3 networks because of spectrum, which we can touch on in a moment if you'd like. But that's the most efficient use of the spectrum. Not 4, not 5, not more. Probably 3. And we saw that there will always be an AT&T and a Verizon in the foreseeable future. We saw room for a real healthy third in a brand that was, from a value proposition, highly differentiated from the others. So there's no question about it in my mind that this will be a 3-player market structure, that T-Mobile will be one of those 3, and the market will end up being divided across those 3 different players. No question about it in my mind.
So I guess that kind of begs the question, what do you see happening with Sprint in the future?
Listen, I don't work there, so I can't, really see everything that's going on. But, they've had a change in management and leadership there recently, as you probably know. The ownership structure behind that company is, Masayoshi Son, which is a highly successful guy around the world. Who has huge ambitions. The starting point that Sprint had, in terms of its network construction, what was happening with its customer base, where its brand stands, same sort of dilemmas that I think, we faced a couple of years ago. They're all correctable. Okay, it's going to, the problem might be a little more acute or less acute, in one of those areas than we had it. They had the iPhone, for example, and we didn't. But it's really, Marcelo Clare is there now. He's a very bright guy. He's a self-made billionaire. You don't sell guys like that short. Backed by another very wealthy guy who's got huge ambitions on a global basis. I'd say let's compete. Let's see where it all comes out. But here's the point of view I think that we would bring to the table. We don't think we have to beat Sprint to win. We don't have to, right now the market split is, they've got 55 million or so customers. We've got a few more than they do at, 55 million plus. AT&T and Verizon have are closer to the neighborhood of 100 million plus each. Here's how the market splits. So I don't have to beat Sprint to win. I have to beat the other guys. And so there's room in there, and how this whole industry shakes out in the future, I think that remains to be seen. But we don't have to beat them. They don't have to beat us. We both got to beat the other guys.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the iPhone. What did you have to do basically to get Apple to agree to let T-Mobile sell the iPhone directly?
Listen, Apple is, clearly the iconic device, the thing that's most popular, with, I would say particularly the youthful population. I mean, you're either a Droid or an iOS type, right? You're sort of probably one of those two. Windows is starting to catch on, but, it's clearly, way behind one of those two things. So it's, as with any major supplier, you have to demonstrate that you're willing to be a good partner. Okay, now Apple, and you have to really appreciate the quality of that company and the way that they have developed that brand, okay, and the very strict, requirements that they have before they will allow you to become a distributor of their products. Now, there were a lot of things that we had to do in terms of investment in the network, the way that we would merchandise the product, all of the promotional support that we would give to the product. Those are things that great brand companies with great product, do because they can. It reinforces their franchise. So there were a set of criteria, around the network and its ability to support LTE, because Apple, and much to their credit, they just don't sell the hardware. They view that they're selling an experience to customers too. And their name is right in front of everything that you're doing. So they want that experience, which has got a network behind it, to have the customer really get the full experience out of the device and the software that they're putting out there. Therefore, their requirements on network performance and things like that, are very high, and rightfully so. It's a very well thought out strategy. So there were a number of those things, and then obviously there's always the commercial terms that you've got to come to agreement with them on in terms of number of units that you're willing to merchandise and purchase and resell into the market, and a variety of other commercial constraints and things that you have to abide by. So complicated, Okay, and you got to remember when they first brought the iPhone to market, they gave the exclusive on that to AT&T. I think that whole concept of exclusivity of devices is sort of becoming a bygone thing, and so it was opportune for both of us. They were looking to expand their distribution. We were looking to include it in our product line. The time was right to bring it together. But that's good.
Hmm. Interesting. Right time, right place.
Right time, right place. Exactly.
And let's see. Sorry, just a sec. I need to open my blinds real quick. The
Yeah.
blinds are.
In your face. I don't know why.
Let's see.
Now you're gonna
That's
have.
still not helping.
Now you got black stripes on your face.
Okay, I guess that's better.
Yeah, now you got dots on your face.
Okay, maybe that'll be okay. Good
Stay right
enough,
there.
I guess.
Right there. Don't move.
So going back to the churn conversation,
Yeah.
so T-Mobile's churn throughout 2000, at least quarter one, quarter two, quarter three was about 1.5, 1.6%, correct?
That's correct.
And there was a survey done by Consumer Intelligence Research Partners that said that a lot of that had to do with T-Mobile's network. And I saw that, I guess when you were in Germany, there were some slides that came out that kind of showed what T-Mobile's coverage should look like by the end of 2015.
Right.
And so that should help with that. And I was just wondering, how will you make that happen, and where will the funding come from, and I guess basically just what is the process that you'll use to get there?
Yeah, sure. Well, look, I think the two dots that you connected right off the top there, churn and network performance or network experience, looking at it from the customer's perspective, they do correlate very directly. So one of the reasons that a customer does leave is because, drop calls or can't get connectivity in every place that they want to go, whether that be, they're going out for the weekend to their country home, or they're going down in their basement because that happens to be where they live, right? So, use of service, that service experience is the largest and most significant reason behind the churn driver. Now, it takes multiple years of successive investment to be able to build a network on the scale and scope and physical characteristics that you would want it to be perfectly ubiquitous in a country as large as the United States is. So we are about the first step was to take all of the spectrum that we had from the legacy T-Mobile, including that which we got through the AT&T breakup in that deal, where spectrum was one of the forms of consideration in the breakup fee. Add to that the spectrum that we got in the Metro PCS acquisition, the way that we reformed that to put that back into the T-Mobile network, repurposed the spectrum, and spectrum that we've been buying in the open market, and spectrum that we just bought in the AWS-3 auction. So, we are now in a reasonably good, actually in a very good position from what we call mid-band spectrum, which is largely for capacity. To be able to fill in that map that Neville was explaining that you're referring to the Capital Markets Day in Germany is really the deployment of a lot of the low-band spectrum that we've already bought. So it gives you a broader footprint. And to be able to get that map to color in the way that he was doing it is we put all of our effort initially to where the customers are, which typically are centered in the major metropolitan markets, okay, and the surrounding suburbs. As we start to cover the highway systems, you get a disproportionate number of square miles of coverage for each tower as you move away from the very densely populated areas. So right now we sit at 260, probably, well, as we reported at the end of the year, 265 million POPs covered. By the end of the year, that map fills in when you take that coverage from 265 to 300. And then you densify that with the low band. Now, to the second half of your question, how do you pay with it? How do you pay for that? So you pay for it with cash that you generate from operating income or operating free cash flow. So basically, I sell, my cost of service is lower, I take the free cash flow that comes off that. That becomes a source of funds that I use against basically my capital expenditure program. I borrow money in the form of debt or debt-like instruments, and I invest that. The third form would be the sale of equity, which we have no intention of doing, but we did sell a convertible instrument, which is a debt instrument that converts to equity last December. So basically, we will finance it through existing cash that we have on the balance sheet, operating free cash flow that will generate through operations, and some additional debt that we'll raise. That's how we'll fund the remainder of the network development.
So in other words, no additional debt will be incurred.
Well, no, we probably will incur. We probably will put additional debt on the business or additional leverage on the business. We've got plenty of capacity to do that. We've got the capital that we need to fund already the 2015 capital development program, but we're also getting ready for the 2016 auction of low-band spectrum. So, you know, we may go back to the capital markets depending on market conditions during the course of 2015 for the purpose of raising funds to put cash on the balance sheet to participate in those auctions next year.
And so in addition to the 600 megahertz, I guess, spectrum coming up, does T-Mobile plan to purchase any additional spectrum besides the 600 megahertz?
Our focus will be principally on that low band. Okay, our portfolio, if you studied our, depth of spectrum in each of the markets on the mid-band spectrum, typically the 1900 to the 2100 frequencies, we're actually, got very deep spectrum portfolios at that frequency level. And that's what's used for capacity. So we're actually in pretty good shape there. Now we picked up. I think we spent about $1.8 billion in the AWS-3 auction, which again is a mid-band frequency, and where we had a little less in some of the Tier 2, Tier 3 markets, we actually backfilled in and put a little bit more depth in those markets for future growth. But across the platform right now, the line of sight is pretty good on the capacity. Where we want to build out the national footprint is on the low band. We bought a big chunk of that in 10 markets from Verizon in 2014. We bought another series of markets in private deals that were held by mostly by venture funds. So we purchased a number of that. There are some additional ones of those that will come to be this year, hopefully. And then we'll go looking forward to the big opportunity, which is to purchase some of that broadcast spectrum from the government as they run the reverse auction.
And do you see any other sources of churn besides the network? I mean, obviously, CIRP attributed it mostly to the network, but do you see any other causes of churn that? Yeah,
when you run down the attributions for churn, okay, network experience is clearly number one. Okay, price, usually comes in at number two. So there's a certain segment of the population, that is very price sensitive, and they'll take their device and they'll go from company to company with device shopping, the lowest price deal. As they have purchased their devices and there's no contract on the service plan side, certainly there are people who are less sensitive to the quality of service. They've sort of figured out, how to go through that switching process with minimum pain. So, they'll switch based on price. Then you go down the list from there. Do you have the device that they want? For example, right now we're not carrying the BlackBerry device. So if you wanted the BlackBerry device as your primary device, you probably would not be able to get that from us, and therefore that might determine which carrier you went with. And then you keep walking down, customer service experience, a variety of other performance attributes that customers vote with. But basically up at the top, it's churn and price value. And so those are the two major drivers that contribute into that.
And, oh yeah, going back to coverage, so the coverage map for the end of 2015 shows expanded coverage in several areas like the Dakotas, some in Montana, West Texas shows a lot of I guess, additional coverage.
Right.
And do you plan to continue to expand coverage beyond 2015, like cover new areas that you're not covering now?
Yeah, the answer is absolutely. Our point of view is that there's no reason why this network can't have the performance attributes that are second to none and better than all. Second to none, not second to none, and better than all. So whether that performance attribute is around coverage and connection capability, drop calls, speed of the network on the download side, we're working with the advantage of a more current technology type of network. So, just to reframe the discussion again, there's 330 million subs in the entire United States. That's it. There are no more. That's everybody that's out there. So our plan is by the end of 2015 to be at 300 and 330 and 260. Then it's a question of making sure that you've got the capacity in the network and that low band frequency in the network that you can use that network wherever you are, whether it's in a building, as you're driving down the highway, whether you're up on the ski slope, whether you're in the sports stadium, send pictures out to your friends that you're over there, watching, whoever your favorite team is or rock. Those are the things that you make that network robust and more robust and more robust by continuing to add capacity, coverage, and both of which yield speed, performance, and quality out of it. So those are the two things. So yeah, our point of view is that, where I think Verizon has staked out sort of the claim to their brand as superior network experience or superior network service, we're going to take that away from them. There's no reason that they, should sit around and be comfortable with that. That's the point of view that we're marching down.
And as T-Mobile continues to grow, do you plan to continue these with the Un-carrier moves and being aggressive and all this stuff that T-Mobile has come to be known for?
Yeah. It's fundamental to who we are and what we view our mission to be right now. So, when we started this whole brand redefinition, we put together something that we called, it was a manifesto, and essentially it is an articulation of a vision that we have of the role that we will perform, what we will be in the wireless industry, and we're on a mission to allow you to experience all of the amazing things that this new technology will do in a mobile lifestyle. And we're going to do that by being the consumer advocate. So our brand is positioned as the consumer advocate. So we're going to continue to challenge the rules in this industry that in effect have limited the full capability set of these amazing technologies that are out there for the betterment of everybody. For example, you take your device today, you go on holiday to Mexico, or you go on holiday to France or England, or in the summer, and what's the first thing you do when you get off the plane? You turn data roaming off. Why? Why? Because you're going to get screwed. Okay, you're going to get a bill shock when you get home, and you're going to have to not go to college next year because you can't make the tuition. All right,
really sad.
That's not a good use of this technology. Okay, I have to tell you that particular example of international data roaming is the biggest scam in the industry. They charge $20 a meg and it costs 2 cents a meg. It's the biggest scam in the industry. So we knew that in fact that's all it cost, and we didn't have a lot of the market share of that. So if we got 4 cents a meg, we were doubling our money. And so we gave as part of the Simple Choice plans a feature called global data roaming, right? And included that, so when you get off the plane, you don't have to turn it off and therefore not get your emails or not listen to music or not check the maps and try to figure out where you're going. Yeah, is it running at 4G speed? No, but the speeds that it's running at is fully capable of doing those applications that I just discussed. Why shouldn't you do that? Our point of view was you should. So let's find a way to do it, still make money for the shareholder at it. That's what the liberation is all about. And the result of it is this thing called the Un-carrier revolution. So one at a time, we've done 8 of these moves right now, right? There are many more, and every move corresponds to a pain point. We just don't come up with a thing that we're going to do, call it an Un-carrier numeral. No, there's a genuine consumer pain point behind it. Let's solve that pain point that's being imposed by the industry and fix that for consumers in a way that satisfies them, and that redefines our brand even more. And there's, believe me, there's a long list of them left, and I bet you're a smart guy. If you sat there for a few minutes, come up with 4 other things, you say, this one's a real pain. Why don't you guys fix that one? They're right there in front of your nose. You've just been, intoxicated into thinking that it's okay because they told you that's the only way you could have it. But, it's not. It's not. John, I think, said it very early on in our tenure here together. He says, if you landed out of a spaceship to Mars and you went to a cell phone store and you tried to buy one of these the way they were selling them, you'd get back in your spaceship and go home because it didn't make any sense. You don't buy a TV set the way these guys were selling cell phones, do you? No. Consumer electronics. Why should it be, why do you have to get, handcuffed into something for the rest of your life? You shouldn't.
Right. And I'm sorry, this is going to be going backwards a little bit, but it's something I forgot to ask right away. When I think you mentioned T-Mobile's goals for coverage at the end of 2016, I think. The audio kind of cut out there, so I didn't really hear it. Could you repeat that, please?
Yeah, sure. So our goals for coverage for 2015, let's start there, is 300 million pops. And then there's only 330 million in the U.S. So let's mop up the rest in 2016.
Impressive.
Okay.
And I guess low-band spectrum will be key there.
Absolutely. Because low-band spectrum, it will be key there. You're spot on. Because the efficiency of low-band spectrum in terms of geographic coverage and propagation, the ability to penetrate buildings and walls is just, you get a lot of bang for your buck, basically. And so as that comes, more available to us, we'll be deploying that hard, and that's how you get the rest of that performance out of the network.
Mm. And does T-Mobile aim to get nationwide licenses for the 600 megahertz band? Or
yes.
Okay.
Yes,
right,
that's clearly part of what we're actively working against right now is developing a spectrum portfolio that's got a nationwide footprint in 600 in low band frequency. Right now, we cover with the spectrum that we've already purchased in the deals that we have cut. We cover 70% of our existing customer base. We've got 55 million customers now, so we've got spectrum. It's not deployed yet. Okay, it's just in the early stages of that. But we've got it in our hands that will cover 70% of that 55 million customers. That still says we've got a lot to go. Okay, that 30% is a big number, but then there's a lot of customers and geographies that we don't have that if you're going nationwide. So we've got to get the remainder to cover our customers, and then we've got to get the full nationwide. That's absolutely right.
Right. Right. And so a little while back, a Deutsche Telekom executive mentioned something like he doesn't see what T-Mobile is doing is sustainable, and of course John Ledger refuted that. I'm just wondering what's your take on that? Is the Un-carrier movement sustainable long term?
Yeah, listen, I think that's a reference to what was an alleged quote from Tim Hutchis, who is the CEO of Deutsche Telekom, and he was grossly misquoted. Okay. And in fact, pardon the expression in a big way, I think John's comment to that day was something like bullshit, okay? But what he was really saying wasn't that Tim's comment was, nonsensical. It was the reporting was nonsensical, okay? Mm-hmm. So, just having been in Germany as recent as last Friday, I left there, I can tell you that, the point of view that is held by our majority shareholder, who can clearly speak for themselves, but as they were representing to their investment community in capital markets today, is that the turnaround that we have executed here in the United States, the Un-carrier movement that we have started here, the number of additional opportunities that we have to bring new things to customers and change the rules in this industry is got a tremendous amount of runway left in it. And that this platform has got optionality now around whether it stays as a standalone business or whether or not there are strategic options that would allow us to participate in consolidation. We are now very much in a pivot seat. Kingmaker seat is actually, I think, the term that they use, where the way that we have developed the platform, the way that we have developed the brand, the way that we have developed the value proposition, and the way that we have developed the loyalty amongst our customer base is clearly, the kind of thing that you wouldn't buy and put in the trash can. In fact, puts us into a position of being, very, very influential over however a potential consolidation move in the future might come. So, that was a ringing endorsement not only to the sustainability of what we're doing, but also to the quality of what we have done and the future prospects of it. So that whole, it was very unfortunate when Tim got misquoted the way that he did, but that's what it was.
That is unfortunate. So speaking of consolidation, T-Mobile is no stranger to talks of consolidation. First of all, the AT&T merger that didn't go through, talks of Sprint consolidation happening with Sprint, first of all, is there any truth to those rumors?
Well, listen, clearly there was truth to the AT&T rumor. That was publicly denied.
Correct. I meant Sprint, sorry.
Listen, as an officer of a publicly traded company, we never comment on any particular deal or conversations that might be underway. But I would tell you, I think we've gone on record, in this way, that, our point of view about whether or not the industry should, be allowed to have further consolidation is very clear. The answer to that is yes. It's got its foundation in the idea that spectrum is of a limited quantity and that, you can only really efficiently use it for the public good, if fewer major networks developing on a finite set of spectrum are just going to be more efficient by very definition. And if you truly want a more robust competitive environment, now you come down to this sort of almost somewhat philosophical question of, are three robust competitors having at each other going to lead to more choices for consumers and more value for consumers than two smaller ones and two bigger ones? And you can put math around that discussion. You can put qualitative elements around that discussion. We land, no matter how we cut the cheese, on the point of view that says, we believe that this probably is a three-player industry structure over the long run. Now, you've got to get by politics and regulatory, controls and approvals in order to get it there. But our point of view is that is most likely where it's going to end up and should end up. Now, how that happens, there are any number of scenarios and plausible ways that can come about. And to speak about any one of them individually is just not something that we do, or I, as a public company officer, can do.
Right. Understandable. And I don't know if you can say anything about this either, but I have to ask. Any hints as to what is coming down the pipeline for the Un-carrier movement?
Yeah, what do you want?
When might we expect to see another Un-carrier announcement? Any hints as to...
Soon.
Any? Could you tell us what kinds of pain points it might be targeting?
No, but in fact, if you do a Google search when we finish, this talk that we're having, you'll probably see we sent out an invitation today to another announcement.
Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah, I haven't been online quite as much today, so at least not yet. So.
Oh, yeah. So take a look.
Will do. Absolutely.
Could be within the next few weeks. Could be.
Wonderful. And is there anything else that you would like people to know about T-Mobile? Anything else you would like to say?
Yeah, there is, because there is one area that I thought you might touch on that's actually one of my favorite ones, and frankly, one of the ones that's most important. And it's when you're in the service business, and we are clearly in the service business, probably something in the order of 70% of what the customer is buying relates to that experience. It's not only just the ability to connect to the internet or have a call go through, it's that whole experience that they have in terms of how they're being sold to, in a store or online. It's that whole experience that when something, needs to be, they need a little help, whether they call into a customer care center or they go back into the store for that, helpful experience. It's that tone of service. It's the way they're treated at that moment of truth, that is frankly the differentiator. It doesn't matter how good the food is at the restaurant. If the service is terrible, you're probably not going back, right?
Right.
So it's always both things. But when your business is a service business and there really isn't a tangible product, okay, it's an intangible product. It is over the perception of the brand, and your willingness to repurchase is virtually dominated by that experience that you have with the human being that you come in contact with. And this is sort of a special spot for, I think, T-Mobile. And I'd invite you, or anybody for that matter, to go do some mystery shopping, okay? Walk into one of our shops or or call into customer care and, judge for yourself, how that experience is, and how you were treated during and how you were left feeling when you left that. Did they make you feel as though you were important? Were they responsive to your needs? Did they take the extra step? This company's got a culture, Jordan, that is my 40-some-odd years of professional experience. Is unique, and it's what the way it gets described here. If you were to talk to a couple of our folks, they would tell you that they bleed magenta. And it's our brand color, obviously. They wear it proudly. I mean, you can see that I wear it every day. And get above the screen here. It's my
John
daily.
Lesher does too.
It's just that way. If you could, I'll flip my computer around so you can see my office here. It's a little bit like a playpen, but it's a magenta playpen. Okay, and it's a playful environment. Okay, and for a large company, it's an extraordinarily passionate, playful environment. And right down to you ask yourself, well, why is it that way? What makes it different? And what I've learned in the couple of years is this company is not that old. It was started as VoiceStream and Western Wireless in the 90s. So in the scheme of things, it's a large company. We have probably there's 100,000 people every day that come to work on behalf of T-Mobile in some way, shape, or form. And it's a $30 billion top-line company with $7 billion of EBITDA and 55 million customers. So by any measure that you want to do it, it's a big company. But it goes back to this culture thing and this passion. It's still very much a founder-based culture. The ethos that the founder had of this company, who was from the Salt Lake area, are characteristically still in this company, and that flame has been, cared for very carefully. We don't have what you would call a value statement. We have something that we call how we play. And there's only 4 or 5 things on that list, okay? The very first one is the one that is the most important because everything else flows out of it. And it's very simply, the front line is first because customers are first. So I, as an executive, for example, I think of the organization as a pyramid, but it's upside down like this as opposed to like this. I work for the front line every day. That's what my role is to listen to them, to solve problems on their behalf, to allow them to do what they do for customers, in a more effective way. I work for them. They tell me what to do. And it goes down into, that translates very quickly into a management philosophy. And the management philosophy that we use is very simple too. You don't need an MBA to know this one. We go out and we listen, and then we do what we hear. And that is so simple, it's scary. But if I go out and a store representative tells me, Dave, this thing is just not working, or customers aren't getting it, I say, okay. Then I ask a second order question. Well, what should I do? Well, if you did this and this and this, it would work. Great. Call home. Hey, do this and this and this. We don't think about it. We don't analyze it. We don't kind of, reduce the person who said it to me. Oh, they're just a frontline rep. How would they understand? They don't understand the bigger picture. No, they understand it perfectly. Get off that, helmet that says, that they can't possibly understand strategy and all this other stuff. They absolutely understand it. Okay, because, that old line that said, just listen to the customer, that is the customer. And if you're listening to the calls with the customers and you're hearing them get frustrated with things, or it's not working the way you would like it to, then fix it and do exactly what they tell you. Now, there's a flip side to that, and then I'll stop here. But when I go out and I listen to something and I see somebody doing something that's really working well, and what's the right thing to do as a leader in the organization? Call them out and say, hey, look at Jordan. Look what Jordan's doing. Jordan's got the right idea. Celebrate Jordan. Draw attention to what, that individual is doing or that team is doing. Now, it clearly brings recognition, the old pat on the back, attaboy thing. But, everybody else looks at what they're doing and then begins to emulate it as well. So, it's a overly simplistic idea that's so powerful that if everybody running every company every day just listened to the people that are talking to the customer and then did, what they told them to do when it wasn't working, or celebrated the things that they're doing that are working, you wouldn't have a lot of these other kinds of problems. But you got to trust your front line. Therefore, your front line's got to be first because the customer's first. We take that to the nth degree. So when you ask me, and I'm not kidding around about what's the next Un-carrier moves and where do you get the ideas from, we listen to the front line, we listen to the customer, both directly and indirectly. And then we do what we hear. When it comes down to methods and procedures, listen to the front line, listen to the customer, do what you hear. Introducing a new product, and what maybe got kinked up a little bit, listen to the front line, listen to the customer, and fix it based on what you hear. Just repeat and repeat and repeat. And it's so elegantly simple, it's scary, but it really does work.
Yeah. Ooh, I'm sorry, it got really dark on me all of a sudden. Just one sec, please.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think that'll be a little bit better.
Yeah. I didn't know what was going on, but, I wasn't going to ask too many questions.
Sorry, what's that?
I could see you were getting very dark there, and I couldn't figure out what was going on, but, I was getting questions about
it. Yeah, just the lighting changing and stuff. So, obviously, John Ledger is not your typical CEO. Do you, and you've mentioned that T-Mobile's I guess going back to the voice stream days, has had this culture that's pretty incredible. Do you think, when you and John Ledger came to work with T-Mobile, has anything changed, or I guess in other words, how do you see that you and John Ledger have affected or shaped T-Mobile's culture?
Yeah. Listen, I think the very values of the culture are the same. Okay, and I think if John were answering the question, he would tell you that what we learned about that was that they were so rock solid and so deeply held that you might just tune them just a little tiny bit, but fundamentally no, they were outstanding. And the very unusual part of it was they were actually being lived. They weren't just words on a wall, in a chart or in a code of conduct book. It was actually the way that, the internal behavior in the company, in the organization, was being lived out. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean that you don't take it to another level. John's style, his personality, is extraordinarily different than any of the predecessors. Not even a tiny bit alike, which sets up an interesting curiosity. How can you, be this very extroverted, highly competitive, one might even argue combative, kind of personality, this irreverent, atypical, yet, kind of, have the same sort of values that would make every one of our mothers proud, right? I mean, so how does that happen? And I think it's when you have to give, you can only be an effective leader if you have followers. And it's an incredible concept when you really think about it. I want to be a leader. Well, great, you can be a leader, but only if you have followers. So the question is, how do you get people to follow? And values all by themselves, if you demonstrate them, yes, they'll follow you if they happen to share those values with you. But what's the call to action, okay, to get people to rise their own individual games up and their collective games up to another level? How do you go about as a leader, that you've been given the formality of leadership, how do you do that? And I think what John has got some unique capabilities on is he is probably one of the most effective communicators that I've ever known in my life. He can dial it from being the appropriate, royal date to the Queen of England and use all the vocabulary and the charm that's appropriate for that kind of a situation. And he can be on the same stretch that very, raucous Las Vegas nightclub act. Because his range, his communication range, and his intellect is that huge, okay, and God gifted him in a way that most of us don't get. He's able to understand and read his audiences. This company, when you really look at the characteristic of our employee body, is an extraordinarily young company. Our average age is 28. Wow. Now you don't talk to a group of 28-year-olds the same way you talk to a group of 50-year-olds. And if you're the leader of an army of 28-year-olds, you've got to understand what's going to get them excited and what's going to fan their passion and what's going to get them to go the extra step. And that's this intuitive ability to understand, even with the generational differences, how you pick a goal, how you pick out an enemy, how you stitch those ideas together to get everybody up and say, yeah, I'm going to come in tomorrow and I'm going to go get them. And I'm going to do a little bit more than I did the day before because I'm in. That's the art and the beauty of leadership, at its peak. Now, I would tell you that when he first got here, he didn't set out to become the face of the brand, which he clearly is right now. This un-CEO, un-carrier, the Twitter handle, that was not the goal. John is actually would shy away from celebrity status, and allow the organization to be, what's out front. That's I know this man very well. That's where he's at. What's happened is something here that's highly unusual that I'm not sure any of us can explain, and I'm not even sure where it goes. Okay, we're in sort of some uncharted territory here, where you've got an individual who has very much become the source of inspirational hope and belief in the company, who has now taken the company and created a consumer-based revolution that, we're not even leading the revolution anymore. The revolutionaries are leading the revolution, and we're the stewards of the things and the beliefs that these customers have now garnered. And his voice and his persona, largely through Twitter, has become a way of allowing every customer on the planet communicate with the head of the organization. And that whole dynamic of what happens on one communications, but within the context of millions, that these new technologies like social, they're opening up possibilities that we're sort of learning as we go. But it's something magical that all started out of this notion of being different, and being a little irreverent and challenging, and built on a culture that was very, let's say, predisposed to that kind of leadership style. So it's sort of a fascinating experiment, and one that we're just blown away by, to be honest with you. And with that comes the responsibility to make sure that we really steward it well and take care of it.
Right, absolutely. And, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I know I've taken up more than 45 minutes.
Friday, I don't care.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I said it's Friday. I got lots of time. Don't worry about it.
Okay, good. And is Is there anything else you would like people to know about T-Mobile?
Just that, it's the best company out there. If you don't know that, certainly that. But listen, I think this is a company that you should have high expectations of. Okay. We certainly have high expectations of ourselves. We're probably more open to criticism, constructive or otherwise, in terms of what we can do to be better than most large companies. Somehow the ability to kind of keep the psychology of thinking small while you are fairly substantial, I think is a bit of our secret sauce. It allows us to move quite quickly. We don't take ourselves very seriously, as you can tell. So we're not all a bunch of stuffed shirts and suits doing what we do. We actually have a lot of fun doing what we do. And I think in a lot of respects, for me personally, if John were here, he'd probably tell you the same thing. We're both at a point in our lives and our careers when, I wore the nice little pretty herme ties for a long time, had a nicer haircut than I have now, and, did everything that I thought, was prim and proper at the time. But, you get to a certain point and, you say, I just want to do it my way. I want to do it my way. And then if you're fortunate enough to be able to, find a group of other people who, have a lot of degrees of freedom in terms of who they spend their time with, what they spend their time doing, and then you find yourself, in alignment about trying to do something like we're doing, man, that's like highly unusual. It's a gift that I could only wish my sons had the opportunity to have a professional experience where you really felt moved by the mission that you were on. You were extraordinarily supported by the people around you. You genuinely liked the people around you, and you were all really doing some pretty good stuff. How does it get any better? How does it get any better?
It doesn't.
It really doesn't. In my experience, 42 years, I just never had anything that was quite as aligned as this is. It's a company that, listen, if you're looking for a cool place to work, I'd say, this is a pretty cool place to work. If you're looking for a service provider who cares, I'd say, I think we probably care more than most. Are we perfect? No. But where we're not, good enough, we'll certainly listen and we'll try to make it that way. Okay? So it's an attitude that, we don't take ourselves too seriously in that regard either. And then, in the communities that we live and work in, just like, you called me to do this, okay? We didn't really know each other before, but I kind of, enjoy kind of sharing and, it's sort of my time to pay back a little bit. And so you asked, and I said, fine, let's do it. And, it's turned out to be a fun thing for both of us.
And I certainly appreciate it.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome.
And, yeah, Thank you again. It really is a lot more than I was expecting. So,
well, if you don't get an A on this project, then I'm going to have to come and just, go back to school with you and your teacher. That's all.
Sounds great. And I'll be sure to share the link with you and everything too.
Okay, perfect. All right, look, have a great weekend. I hope you digest this down into something that's really helpful to, to your coursework there. I've enjoyed your questions. Friend, let me pay you a compliment as we end. You did your homework. It showed. Okay, I picked that up in our very first telephone conversation that, this was somebody to be taken seriously. This wasn't just somebody who was trying to fill blank in on a school or course requirement. So no question about it, you prepared yourself for this time, and which made it a very engaging discussion. So my compliments to you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
It doesn't get much better than that.
Hey, I'll show you my office. Let's see if we can do this, okay?
Yeah, please.
Tell me what you some of my office transportation. Let me see if I can get that in the picture.
That's so cool.
So that's my elliptical bike. Let's get this going there. See that clown cycle looking thing there? I have a electric scooter to get around the office. Can you see the scooter there? Where's the scooter?
Oh yeah.
Then I got some friends that stick around with me too. That's
Hey, there's Carly.
There's Carly. So she hangs out here too. Okay. And then there's the protector of the brand. So if you find my Twitter handle somewhere out there, you'll find Carly in the brand protector out there. And then over this way, let's say, there's my desktop. Looking out the windows, you can see it's a nice day here in Seattle.
Nice view.
Yep. And then, my wall of T-Mobile stuff, and up there. And then the table here where I was sitting at, where I had the computer and was chatting with you. So that's my playpen.
What a playpen it is. Actually, speaking of Carly, any chance she'll come back and do some more commercials or anything? Oh, hello?
I think I lost you. Still there?
I hear you now.
Probably not. Her contract expired with us last year. She was on with us through 2014. But we've now taken the brand beyond the need for a spokesperson, actually. It's a very conscious marketing strategy where, at some point in time you can take a very talented young person like Carly and make them the face of your brand. She probably was a little less of a spokesperson and more of an image. And then, we went through a very careful choice process of did we want to have a spokesperson for the brand. But as you can watch our advertising now, the answer came out obviously not. And we chose to be able to allow our brand to be imaged with, customers and the millennial generation that is very much a part of our customer base and really speaks with the attitude that, we're trying to bring to the industry. So, we'll use talent from now and then to create awareness, hence Kim Kardashian at Super Bowl, not exactly a spokesperson, but, got a buzz, right? Got a buzz out of, self-effacing and having a little laugh at herself. But, using talent like that is a little bit more of just a reason to catch your, brand spokesperson at all in the near future. She's a good kid. She's only 22. She's a delightful young person.
Oh, she's younger than I am.
Yeah, she's younger than most people think she is, too. Yeah, no, she's a very, very, very nice young person.
Huh. Very cool. Hey, that was really cool, getting a tour of the office.
Yeah, cool. All right, well, you have yourself a great weekend, okay?
You too. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.